Hey, and welcome back to Aamsuntitledpodcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to my Percy Jackson dedicated podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about season 2, episode 2, which is Demon Pigeons Attack. If you don't know how this works, basically, I give you a rundown of what happens in the episode, and I kind of just talk about my thoughts and feelings, anything I noticed, any references to the book, that sort of thing. I'm actually very excited about this. It feels so nice to be back. If any of you didn't know, I had a little bit of a 3 month gap because my mental health wasn't the best and I just had so much to do and I was just not ready to put 100% back into this. And you know me, I don't record unless I'm 100% ready to do this. So yeah, it's so nice to be back and I can't wait to share what I found. I know I'm behind with a lot of people because I know everybody's already reviewing episode 7 and is ready to do the season finale. Whereas with me, it's taken a bit of time for me to sit down and, just read into these things. And yeah, it took me a ridiculous amount of time yesterday to just sit and go through episode 2 and just really break it down and try to understand it in my head before I share that understanding with you guys. So I'm sorry it has taken so long for me to get on board with everyone else, but I really do hope that you enjoy the episode. Just a couple of things before we start. If you are new here, thank you so much for clicking on this. It means the absolute world to me. And I really hope you enjoy. I'm gonna call this a waffling thing because that's literally, let's be honest, that's all I do. I sit here and I talk for bloody England because I've got nothing better to do than to sit here and ramble. But I enjoy it. Like it's probably the highlight of my week when I get to sit and do this. So it's very nice to be back. And yeah, I'm glad I'm on this thing now where I'm going to upload every week. Like no matter what happens, I'm gonna upload every week. So I feel a lot more like I have the motivation to do it now, and I didn't have that before, so it's nice to have that back. Also, all episodes of the show, well, not all of them, we are one episode away from yeah, we're on the final episode basically. So if you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend you catch up before the episode comes out for the pure reason that I know for a fact that it will be all over Instagram Reels, it will be all over TikTok. Like at the minute, that's all my For You pages. It's just Percy Jackson, and it's great. Don't get me wrong, like, I love it, but it is full of spoilers for people that haven't seen it. So please, please make sure you catch up on the episodes now before the finale is released. Um, Obviously, we've got a bit of a while, maybe a few weeks before I get to talk about the finale with you guys, but hopefully by then everybody would have binge watched it and then it won't be spoilers anymore. But I'm just going to give a minor little disclaimer here before I do anything. This episode does contain major spoilers from episode 2. So if you haven't seen it yet, please don't listen into this because it's going to ruin it for you. But if you have, then feel free to keep listening. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so scene 1, so the episode sort of opens with the Stymphalian bird flock circling the arena where the chariot race is about to happen. And Percy and Annabeth are discussing how long they've got until the birds get through the barrier, because obviously they're very intelligent creatures. They can sense that the border is failing because obviously Thalia's tree's been poisoned. You know what? I think the show did a great job designing them because the way they're described in the book, um, it's kind of hard. Like it feels like it fell out of the book, which is like exactly the feeling that I want when I see something like this. It has to be book accurate, and I think that they did a good job with the Stymphalian birds. I thought it was amazing. Um, and obviously Percy and Annabeth have this plan to break into in inverted commas, Tantalus's office. It's not Tantalus's office, it's Chiron's office, but whatever. And Annabeth asked Percy, if he's still okay with getting in trouble so that she can sneak into the office. And you know what? I think this is something that was slightly overlooked by people. Do you know how cute it is that they constantly check in with each other? Like, I love the fact that they always ask the other person's permission. Nothing is ever done without asking that person's permission and how they feel about it, especially if it puts that person in a bad position or in danger. And I love that they do that. And I'm so happy the show has incorporated that element in it as well. Also the way they're looking at each other and the way they say Percy and Annabeth, it's so, you know what, it's such a simple thing that can be done wrong, believe it or not. But you can tell that Walker and Leah have that comfort, and they have, I don't know what you call it. It's just like this naturalness when they do it. It doesn't look forced, which I like. I really appreciate that, and that all of a sudden goes down to how hard they work um with people, and how much they've worked on this chemistry to kind of lean into it, but also not lean into it, if you know what I mean. And Percy gets spotted by Tantalus's right hand satyr. Did you see what I did there? Very clever. Instead of saying right hand man. Also, please tell me if that's absolutely terrible, because I think that was funny, but I know a lot of people will be like, why did she say that? But yeah, so obviously he's a little bit of a snitch, and he sees Percy and he's like, oh, if you don't know, Percy's supposed to be in cabin confinement till the end of summer, because of Tantalus, but obviously he's breaking the rules. Percy tells Annabeth to find Chiron, and they both say for Grover, and it's so cute. It's like, you know what, the bonding that the trio has, like no matter what happens and how many new characters get introduced, like they are the heart and soul of these books. And I love that they would do absolutely anything for each other, and I think this is a really good example of them just, you know, doing whatever it takes to protect the people that you love. And I think that's such an important message to put out into the world, especially the world that we live in right now. I feel like that gets forgotten a lot, and people tend to give up on each other. And I think that Percy, Annabeth, and Grover are a great example of not giving up on the people you love. Annabeth puts on her invisibility cap and leaves, and Percy just stands there awkwardly saying that he's awaiting punishment. You know what? He's so adorable. Like, he just does this. He's just got, I don't know how to describe it apart from the fact that of saying like Walker just has that Percy Jackson flair. Like, I swear to God, like Rick shook the books and Walker fell out, because he is just so book accurate. It is crazy. And I was talking about this with my best friend. I was just like, he is the Percy. Like, he has the type of behavior I envision Percy to have. Yes, he doesn't exactly look like book Percy, but he really is Percy. Like, he is. Sometimes it gets confusing as to whether Walker is playing Percy or Percy is playing Walker, and I just sit there and I think about it sometimes. But yeah, I just love. He's just got this natural elegance and charisma about him, which I really appreciate. Anyway, let's move on to the next scene. So scene two obviously takes place inside Tantalus's office. Tantalus is trying to drink, but he can't. So if you don't know, Tantalus is under a curse. I can't remember for what reason Zeus has done this, but he has this curse to like look at food and drink, but he can't actually eat or drink. And he's had this curse for about 3,000 years. So I think he's a teeny bit hangry, and he's just a little bit grumpy, which is why he takes it out on the kids, which is kind of a little bit understandable, but also not understandable. I get a bit pissy when I'm hungry, but I wouldn't punish children for it. Let's just put it like that. The satyr tells Tantalus about Percy. What a little snitch, man. You know, snitches get stitches, guys. I'm just saying. Like, this satyr like might think that he's doing the right thing, but he's actually not. And obviously, Tantalus and the satyr leave his office, and Annabeth takes off her invisibility cap. And as she's looking around Chiron's office, she finds his boombox and the music. Do you know what? I like the subtle foreshadowing. I think the cassette that he had was Mariah Carey's Emotions. I couldn't see it properly yesterday. I was trying to figure out what it was, and I couldn't figure it out. So if anybody could actually see it, please tell me if I'm wrong. But that's kind of what it looked like to me. And you know, Annabeth decides to give him an iris message. She wants to find out where it is, because at this point, like, the kids have no idea what happened. They know that he's been kicked out by Zeus for being a son of Kronos, which we know is ironic. Let's not even go there. But they actually don't know why or where he is. So as she iris messages him, she finds out that he's in Miami with his brothers. I love the book reference to the party ponies, which is so cool. I hope, I really really hope that they are in the season finale, but I don't know just yet. But I'm really praying that they are, because I do love that element of the book, and I hope that they're in it. And I'd love to see Chiron back in the season finale, but I don't know what they're going to do with the show. But we'll see. We'll see. I have hope. Let's keep hoping that they're part of the series. And then Chiron takes off his sunglasses and he asks what happened to his office. Do you know what? This is so funny because it's the way he took his glasses off. It's like a proper like diva move. He was like, "What happened to my office? Like, who's using my office? Who's messing with my stuff?" And it was, yeah, it was just funny to me. Like, me and my best friend who was there while I was trying to like take the notes for this review, he was just laughing as well. It was so funny. And I love Chiron so much, and I'm glad that he's got, even though he's a trainer of heroes, like, I'm glad they've added like a sense of humor factor to him as well, which is great. Okay, so the next scene is at the chariot arena, and it is Percy talking to our new Chris Rodriguez. If you didn't notice him, they've changed him from season one to season two. I don't know the reason why. I don't really want to know the reason why. I'm just glad that we are able to embrace someone new into the family. And basically, Clarice is just flirting with Chris, which is very cute. But I also thought that it was so out of character for her because I've never really seen Clarice in that vulnerable light. Like, I never could have imagined, like, in a million years that Clarice would ever do something like that. And in a public forum as well. Like, everybody stood around, like, everybody's getting ready for the chariot race. And she uses the quote, which is, I can be very persistent when I mark my prey. And it was just like, she has such a unique way of flirting with people. And I think even Chris doesn't know what she's trying to say, but like Percy's just stood there with like the biggest like smile on his face. And you know what? So did I as well. I was like, I'm just happy for her because I've never seen her, and obviously, the books are like written from Percy's perspective, so we don't really get to see much of what's going on in Clarice's internal monologue. But obviously, the show has the ability to hash out the characters a little bit more, and it's just nice to see her, like, as silly as it sounds, it's just nice to see her happy. Like, I haven't really seen her very happy, especially in season one. She wasn't happy at all, but I'm glad that she is doing something that makes her happy. And he's such a like Percy's a shipper like us, and I'm like, oh, it's really cute. And then obviously Clarice realizes that the whole camp is watching her, and Percy's there, and she tells him to shut up. He didn't even say anything, but she's like, she knew what he was thinking. I think everybody knew what she was thinking, to be honest. But yeah, Tantalus catches Percy, and he tells him that um he's found a way to save Cam. So Percy is very clever in this scene because he says it loud enough that everybody around can hear, so they know, like, ooh, like somebody has a solution, like somebody has the ability to save Cam, and he knows that if that requires them to like pressure Tantalus for a quest, like if he's got the whole camp on his side, he can do that. Um, and if he has the support of camp, he knows that he'll be able to go on the quest regardless of what Tantalus says. So I'm glad that they showed Percy in a more intelligent light as well, because he is actually quite a clever character. I know a lot of people like say that he's pretty much a muscle, but he's more than that. Like, he does have a brain as well, and he does know how to use it. Um, and what I loved about this part of the episode is there's a lot of flashbacks between what's going on with Percy and what Annabeth is doing as well. So it flashes to Annabeth and Chiron talking about the Golden Fleece, and that we find out, she obviously tells Chiron that 30, 31, 75, 12 is the coordinates to Polyphemus's island to get the Golden Fleece, basically. And she said that Percy learnt about those coordinates in a dream, like, and we know that from last episode that Grover is the one who told him about those coordinates. Um, and obviously Chiron is just sitting there a bit like, you know what I mean? Like, you can tell, like, he's gonna say something that Annabeth is not gonna like. And then it flashes back to Percy, and Percy touches the chariot. Oh, hold on a second. No, that's wrong. Sorry, my bad. That's not part of this scene. It's because I've got my notes on like both sides, so that's a completely other scene. I don't know why I've just said that. Ignore me a second. That doesn't come just yet. Tantalus tells Percy that he's still supposed to be under lockdown for another 90 days, which is, of course, how long is left in summer. And Percy basically savages him and pulls out the camp rule book. My guy has probably never used a rule book in his life, but he pulls out a rule book, which makes me laugh. And he says that he's allowed to be here because obviously they're allowed to participate in wider camp activities like the chariot race. So in your face, Tantalus. Um, and then it flashes to Annabeth again, where she's telling Chiron that, that Tantalus won't authorize this quest to save Thalia's tree. And I don't understand why. I suppose Tantalus doesn't care, to be honest, what happens in the camp, because he's basically immortal and he's just going to keep living because of this curse. And obviously, he doesn't care about what happens to the demigods because none of them are his children. It's If they die, the way I look at it is, if they die, it has no relevance to him whatsoever, which is why he's not listening to them. Sorry about that. Got minorly interrupted. So, as Annabeth is talking to Chiron, he tells her to stop, and he mentions that there's this great prophecy that is only known to a few people, and I can't remember in the book this great prophecy ever being mentioned. I think it's because this book is told from Percy's perspective, so obviously we don't, like, if Annabeth did hear from Chiron about the prophecy, which she probably did, it's never explicitly stated in the book. Um, and I was kind of glad because a lot throughout season two, like we'll talk about it, is this great prophecy is mentioned a lot. And I think it's very important because obviously, like, as the coming seasons build up to this great prophecy, like, it's kind of good that fans kind of have the gist of it. Like, even if we don't know the words, like like we don't know the actual words of the prophecy. At least we know that there's this prophecy that's going to cause a lot of problems in the near future, basically. And Chiron tells Annabeth that she needs to find a way to quest for this fleece before basically Cronus and Luke's army gets to it. But he says that she has to do this without Percy, and she's sort of like, oh my god. She's like, yeah, but what am I supposed to say to him? Like, he's never just gonna let me go on a quest by myself. And I thought it was like such a big moment in the show where she actually realizes that the person who she trusts the most, who is Percy, and the person who would she would do anything for in a dangerous situation, isn't allowed to help her, which I think it was quite harsh on Chiron's end, but I also understand why he's asking her to do it. And then it flashes back to obviously Percy and Tantalus basically threatens Percy and he walks off. He said like, if you die, like I'm not going to be too bothered, that sort of thing. Chiron tells Annabeth, that Cronus was behind the poisoning of Thalia's tree because he wanted this quest to happen for whatever reason. So Chiron wants Percy to stay at camp in order to be safe. This is the only place that he can be protected until away from Cronus, basically. And Annabeth uses the dialogue, "I can't lie to him." Like, and I think the reason why she says that is, yeah, obviously she can't lie to him, but also I think it has a bit of a double meaning, where she's like, she knows that Percy knows her so well that he would be able to tell if she's keeping something from him. And I think that also that is very cute. But another thing is like, okay, right, so how do we get along the situation? Like so far, like she's been deflecting, as we'll learn a little bit later on, she's hiding things from him anyway, and that's why she hasn't been speaking to him as much. But now this is another big thing that impacts his future, and it's going to change how everybody views Percy, and she can't tell him, which I think is it's such an awful position to be put in. Like, I would hate to be in her shoes right now. And Chiron says to Annabeth that he's sorry, but Percy can't know that there's something that he can't know. Percy can't even get the gist that Annabeth is hiding something from him. She has to be that good of an actor, which is quite difficult, I imagine. And it sort of scene ends with her being really upset, and I just felt terrible. I was like, oh my god, you poor thing. You should not have to deal with that burden on your shoulders. So let's move on to the next scene. So, this scene opens up with Percy obviously in the stable taking out the Poseidon chariot. I'm just going to take a moment to just appreciate the color scheme of of this chariot, and like the barnacles, like the attention to detail that the prop people do and the costume people do is insane. Particularly, I think you see it more in this episode, but the chariot is so cool. It's got like the trident in the front, it's got like the barnacles from the sea on it. It's a lovely like blue with sort of greeny turquoisey color, which I think is stunning. And obviously, Percy asks Annabeth, like he notices that she stood there, and he asks her about Chiron, obviously. And you can tell, like just from this is such like down to Leah as well. Like her body language has changed. Like you can see that she's trying so hard to keep him in the dark. Maybe Percy doesn't notice it straight away, but I was a bit like when I was watching her, I was like, yeah, 100% she's hiding something. Like you can tell, like she's got this towards the end of season one, she sort of let her guard down a bit, and I could see like her guard is slowly coming back up again to try and push Percy out, which is obviously very sad, but also I understand why she's doing it as well. She tells Percy that she's been instructed to win the chariot race by Chiron in order to gain a boon from the gods. Um, the way Percy says boon honestly just kills me. If you don't know what a boon is, it's basically like a favor or maybe like a prize or a reward, you could say, that is granted by the gods when you do something in their name or whatever. I don't really know like how it's sort of relevant to what's going on right now, but whatever. Yeah, and the way Walker says boon is like my favorite thing. Like it's just I don't know the way, I don't know how he said it, but it was just his facial expressions when he was saying it that made me laugh. And she says that when she wins this chariot race, she'll ask for a quest for the golden fleece. And I feel like I don't think many people picked up on this, but it was the show's way of subtly foreshadowing what her fatal flaw is. If you don't know what Annabeth's fatal flaw is, it gets revealed a little bit later on in the show, but I'm going to tell you right now, it was hubris. So hubris is basically excessive pride, and she has this pride and she's convinced that she can win this race against all odds. But also like it was a bit of a moment for me, because she says when I win, which is a bit like she's already like starting to distance herself from Percy. She thinks that the best way to avoid accidentally telling him about this prophecy is to just stay away from him, which is really sad that she's been put in this situation that she obviously has no control over. But I don't think Percy understands what is going on. So it's just like it's a very complicated situation, and it's a very tough situation for anyone to manage. And, I like that they've subtly hinted at her fatal flaw, but also shown the audience that, yeah, she has to stay away from him, not by choice, but because the circumstances demanding her to do so. Um, Also, there's a bit where Percy was like, he wanted to, team up for this chariot race, and he was under the impression that they were gonna like race together. And he says like he actually presents a very valid argument, because he was like, your mum created chariots, like my dad created horses. Like if we ride together, like we're literally unbeatable. But obviously, he doesn't understand what's truly going on. Um, and it's really sad that it's not possible that they can ride together. And I felt so bad for Percy at this point, because the poor thing has no idea what's going on or what Annabeth is trying to do. And he's just, he just looks a little bit disheartened, and that made me really sad. And Percy thinks that the reason that Annabeth doesn't want to ride with him is because of Tyson. And obviously, yeah, Annabeth doesn't like Tyson, but obviously she would never take such a drastic step to stay away from him. It's obviously all this stuff that's going on with the prophecy. And, he's trying to defend himself. He said, like, the reason why I wasn't talking to you last night is because I was trying to do the right thing. He literally says that. And it's like, he tries so hard to be such a good friend to everyone. And, it's one of the reasons why I love him. Like, he always wants to do best by the people that he loves, even though that decision might not look like the right decision in other people's minds, if that makes sense. And Annabeth says that, she doesn't care about Tyson. And if they ride separately, like, they stand a better chance of winning. So at least one of them can win and pick the other as a quest mate, basically. And, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of these comments online where people are like, Annabeth's hatred for, like, Cyclops has been really turned down. And it's obviously an essential part of this book. I think the reason why it's been turned down is, if you think about this from a practical perspective, I personally think Annabeth has too much to worry about right now, other than her hatred for Cyclopses. Obviously, Thalia's dying, Grover is lost, Luke has betrayed her, like, and she's in a bit of a rocky phase in her relationship with Percy as well, where she can't be 100% honest with him. So I understand why not worrying about Tyson is, like, not at the top of the agenda. Yes, she doesn't like Cyclopses. Yes, she doesn't like Tyson. But they're not leaning too much into that, because there's other things that are more important that are going on. So I stand with the show's decision to do that. I know, feel free to disagree with me, but I genuinely think that they did the right thing. Um, and Annabeth sort of tells him to prepare for the race tomorrow and just leaves. So you're already noticing, like, she's cutting her time short with him. Like, she doesn't want to spend too much time with him, because she knows that she can be so vulnerable with him that she could accidentally say it. So she chooses to just leave that situation. Um, Percy sort of touches the chariot and it falls apart. Honestly, it made me laugh, because it made me think of the books. And do you know how I sort of mentioned when I was reviewing the first five books particularly, that Rick creates these very serious scenes that are so intense and full of tension, but then he adds like a humorous element to it. And I think that obviously this scene with Percy and Annabeth, even though it doesn't feel as intense, is a little bit intense. So he's actually just put something funny in there to give the audience a bit of a relief, which I thought was quite funny. And it's one of the parts of the books that I love the most, so I'm glad that they've sort of put that in the show. Right. Let's move on to the next scene, which is sort of takes place in Poseidon's cabin. And Tyson is fixing something, and Percy walks in and asks him if he can fix this chariot wheel that he's obviously broken. Tyson asks Percy like if he's saved camp yet. He's so innocent, and he sees Percy as such a hero, and he thinks that things can just be fixed overnight, which is so sweet of him. But gosh, I've had so many interruptions this episode. I'm so sorry. My brain is just not working now. Right. Let's try again. Let's see if I can get it this time. So Tyson tells Percy that he's written a letter to Sally, and Percy looks quite jealous. Um, I understand why he's jealous. Obviously, this is the first time in a long time he's not had to share his mum. And now all of a sudden this new guy's come around, and it's sort of like Percy feels like he's been replaced a little bit, which is obviously not true. Like, Sally loves him more than anything, please don't get me wrong. But it's just like, oh, this new guy is all of a sudden like a better son than I am, sort of thing. And Percy just asked him like, what did you say in the letter? And he says that, oh, just that we've reached camp safely. And Tyson also asks him like, is it a bad thing that I've done that? Have I done something wrong? Because obviously he notices that Percy's face has fallen a little bit, and he's like, no, no, it's fine, it doesn't matter, sort of thing. He's so sweet. Like Tyson is probably one of my favorite characters, and Daniel is just he's just perfect. Like I don't know what else to say. Like I'm so glad like he pushed for this audition for Percy because he was so good. And Tyson shows Percy the new compass is made for him when he goes on the quest. That is so sweet. Like he's so considerate, and it's like I don't think Percy's ever been like apart from Sally, like I don't think anyone's ever spoiled him before like that, and it's just so nice that someone is appreciate him. Uh, what words? Appreciating him for who he is, which is very nice. And also like it made me think back to a scene that happened in season one where there's do you guys remember the flashback scene? I think it was in either episode one of the first season or maybe episode two. And we see like young Percy and Sally, and they're like discussing monsters. And there's a bit where Sally says that not everybody who looks like a monster is a monster, and not everyone who looks like a hero is a hero. And I think that perfectly shows Tyson. Like Tyson may look like a monster, but deep down he's like the softest and sweetest guy ever, which is so nice. Um, Percy is playing with the compass. I think the ADHD's kind of kicked in a little bit while Tyson was fixing the chariot wheel. And Tyson asked Percy like, when can he meet Poseidon? And this made my heart drop a bit because I was just like, I was thinking like he's gonna get so disappointed, and he doesn't deserve that. He's honestly too pure to be in this world, and Percy sort of tells him like the bad news, which is like we don't get to decide when to meet our father. Like he just comes to us whenever, sort of thing. And he says the quote, which is the gods show up when they want to, not when we want. And it's such a powerful quote, and you can see the sadness in Walker's eyes when he's saying it, and yeah, it's just it's just awful, really. That's how I felt when I was watching the scene. I just felt so terrible for them because they're such good kids and they genuinely don't deserve that. He just tells Tyson that Poseidon is busy at the moment, so he's still defending his dad, even though his dad doesn't deserve to be defended. And Tyson looks so downhearted because of it, and I was just like, no, I can't take this. I can't take both of them being sad. And Percy sort of does this big brother thing, which is like he reassures Tyson that Poseidon probably would like to see them more. And I think it's just something that Percy's had to tell himself to try and get through not seeing his dad as much, I suppose. And the scene sort of ends with Tyson fixing the wheel, and Percy asks Tyson if he wants to get out of the cabin. And obviously Tyson's like, yeah, but we're in like in lockdown, like we can't go anywhere. And Percy just has this like perfect mischievous smile, which is so adorable. Walker is literally Percy. Like nobody can convince me otherwise. Like he's just perfection, and he plays Percy in such an incredible way, which I love so much. Right, let's move on to scene six, which are the bit that I was most looking forward to in this episode, which are the chariot races. And the scene sort of opens up with 300 extras on the outside of the arena, and the Hermes, Athena, Ares, and Hephaestus cabins at the starting line for the chariot race. Tantalus announces that the race is about to happen, but he forgets to mention no killing. So Dionysus says, like, make sure you say that. And he's like, um, he says dirty tricks encouraged, but he also says no killing, but he goes that we understand that things happen, etc., etc. So basically, he's kind of hoping one of the demigods die or something. And there's a bit where Tantalus is making a bet with Dionysus that Ares' cabin is going to win, but we'll see. And then the charioteers sort of all turn around, and it's Percy and Tyson entering together, representing the Poseidon cabin. And it's so nice to see them bonding. Like I know they've had a bit of a rough start, sort of thing, and I think they both really need someone. And I'm glad that they're that person for each other. And can we just talk about how amazing this entire set for the chariot races were? It was huge looking at it, and also like the battle armor that each house has. Like I think it was Percy and Tyson's armor that has like the hippocampi on it. It has rainbow on it, and then the Athena cabin, she has like an owl on it to symbolize wisdom. I didn't really notice the Ares one, but I know that the Hephaestus cabin had two cogs on their armor, and the Hermes cabin obviously had his wings, which I think was quite cool. And Percy asked Tyson. like if they should do like a glory to Poseidon. All the other houses were glorifying their parents, and Tyson says that he wants to make his dad proud, but he doesn't want to do it by hurting anyone. And you know what? He's so you guys are gonna get sick of me saying this, but he's so innocent and he's so pure, and I hope that he keeps that on him because he's got a good head on his shoulders, despite the fact that he looks like a monster. He really isn't, and I'm hoping like as seasons progress, we get to see more of Tyson because he is brilliant. Um, and Percy sort of tells Tyson, focus on defense, but do not target Annabeth under any circumstances. They're on the same team basically, but Annabeth, you could say, has other plans. Annabeth tells Bronte, who is also a daughter of Athena, who, by the way, the actress who plays Bronte is gorgeous. I was looking at her and she's stunning. She has these beautiful eyes, and I was like, wow, she's so pretty. Like, I remember saying to my best friend as we were watching it together, I was like, oh my god, she's stunning. Like, she's so pretty. Obviously, Leah is just beautiful. Please don't get me wrong, but I thought Bronte was stunning, so I thought I would mention that as well. And she asked Bronte, to take out the Poseidon chariot if they take the lead. And Tyson sort of overhears this conversation and his face falls. He's got very good hearing. And I was like, oh god, that's going to cause so many problems. So the race is about to start, and Clarice takes out the Hephaestus defending charioteer, and then the horn blows for them to start the race. She's just brutal, isn't she? Like, you can tell like she's like a daughter of Ares. Like, whatever soft side we saw of her about 10 minutes ago has completely gone because she's so competitive and so ready to win. Um, and as the race is going on, the Athena cabin is in the lead with Annabeth leading it. I'm so proud of Leah for like leading that chariot race as well. Like, it's so terrifying when 300 people are staring at you while you're doing this, and like these are real horses. Like, they're unpredictable like like any animal, but she did so well to lead this race, and I was so proud of her. And Annabeth looks over to check on Percy, and she notices the Stymphalian birds, and the Hephaestus cabin think that their chariot is about to blow up, and they try to take it off the track, but obviously it's very hard because there's the other four cabins that are competing. The Ares cabin eventually overtakes Hermes, and Dior's evil laugh. Can we just talk about it? It's so cute. I was just looking at her. She just has the biggest smile on her face. I just get like that, and it's so sweet. And I was just like, yeah, Dior is so funny as Clarice. Like, I just love her. I think she's great. And she tells Mark to obviously take the Cyclops out, which she's referring to Tyson. I don't like the fact that they objectify Tyson like he's just some monster. Like, they don't treat him like a normal human being because he looks like a monster. And Mark eventually falls out of the chariot, and Tyson says that he's sorry. And it's so, do you know what? He's so unserious, but also he's so sweet, and he doesn't want to hurt anyone, and he's literally just done the opposite of that. The Hermes cabin eventually loses control over their chariot, and they all fly out the chariot. Honestly, watching like Chris and the other um Hermes cabin defender, I was just like, oh my god, they're gonna die. Like, they've literally just hurt themselves because they literally just face plant the floor. It's crazy. And the Hephaestus chariot eventually explodes. That was so cool because there's this shot of the Ares cabin and the Poseidon cabin chariot, like they're fighting, like they're sword fighting, Percy and Clarissa, and like in the background you just see this explosion. You can tell like this entire sequence had been thought out with so much detail, which yeah, honestly, kudos to like the stunt team, anybody who was working that day, because it was just a phenomenal shot. And I don't know who the director of the second episode was, but whoever it was, they did a great job. And Mr. D and obviously Tantalus are loving it. Like, for them, like, even though like Mr. D has children, like obviously none of them are competing, so I suppose he's not really bothered if anybody else's children die. But yeah, it was just funny because they're like this, when I don't know how to describe it, but with those TV shows where you have like a live audience, it was like watching, like, it's like that, I think. It's so good. The Ares and Poseidon cabin are obviously like head to head in the race, and Clarissa's Die Jackson, and obviously they both end up sword fighting. I love that they've still got this rivalry, which is like, and I think Clarissa's still a bit annoyed about him, like, sort of not calling her out for flirting with Chris, but also like just seeing it, and she just wants to attack him. It's so funny. Um, and then Annabeth obviously is still in the lead, and she notices that the birds are starting to get through the barrier because the barrier is failing. And Clarice uses her spear on the wheel to take out the Poseidon chariot. So eventually the wheel sort of falls off and the Poseidon chariot comes to a stop. So Annabeth didn't have to do the dirty job, which was to kick Percy out of the race. Clarice did that for her, basically. And Percy falls out of this chariot and he's being literally dragged with the chariot, and Tyson manages to save him. Honestly, I felt so sorry for Walker. That looks so painful, and I was like, oh my god, I hope he's okay. I know obviously the stunt team protect them, but I was still a bit like, that looks painful. I would not want to do that. Um, the birds obviously start attacking all the campers who are watching the chariot race, and Percy and Annabeth pull out of the race, but Clarice is still going. Like, she's adamant she's going to win, even if everybody else has pulled out of the race. She still wants to make it to the finishing line. Tantalus says that they have a mild field hazard, and he gets attacked, and his screams were so funny. Like, honestly, Timothy is such a great actor. Like, I just thought he played that character so well, and it was just seeing like Tantalus acting like such a massive child. Like, everybody else is like, I'm not saying the campers were calm, but they were a lot more calm than he was. And I know I'm a bad person for laughing at him. I'm fully aware of that, but it was actually hilarious. Percy shouts Annabeth to ask how to defeat these birds, and Annabeth suggests using high pitched sound like Hercules did in Greek mythology. They both run to Chiron's office and grab his boombox. And as they come out to the arena, Mariah Carey's Emotion starts playing. What an absolute banger! I love that song. I think it's such a great. I love Mariah Carey in general. I think she's got brilliant music and she's got a lovely voice. And it was the song that was playing. Like, I was just, it was so unserious in such a serious moment, and I was just laughing because it was just great. And the Stymphalian flock eventually retreats after hearing the high note. And then the whole arena, like, literally is a mess, and there's so many like injured campers. Like, I feel sorry for all of them. Like, they were all covered in dirt and like scratches, and yeah, it was just awful. The way obviously Annabeth and Percy were looking at each other, as the song comes to an end, like, I was screaming. Like, I'm still a Percabeth shipper at the end of the day. Like, I do feel bad for all the other campers, don't get me wrong, but I was focused on Percabeth. Like, I wanted to make sure they were both okay. And the way they were looking at each other was so cute. I actually can't. The longing stares are just, yeah, it just does it for me. Tantalus says that we did it. I'm sorry, who is we, man? You literally did nothing. You were stood there like screaming your head off, and somebody else had to come in and save you. But sure, it's we. Okay, let's move on to the next scene. So I'm assuming this was inside like a communal camp building. I wasn't sure. It kind of looked like Mr. D's office, but I knew for a fact that it wasn't. And Mr. D says that, once the arena's been fixed, like, the chariot races will be rescheduled. And all the campers are just sort of sitting there like, it was so awkward. Like, they're just all sat there in silence. Like, you can tell that they're so done. And like, whatever fun the chariot races were supposed to be has completely gone out the window. And Tantalus says that the barrier will fail in 1 week, which means that they, like, all the demigods will have to like run for their lives basically, and they'll have nowhere safe to protect them. But he says it in such like a nonchalant way, as if like nothing bad is happening, which is insane. And like I said, it comes back to the fact that it's like I said, it comes back to the fact that obviously it has nothing to do with him. Like, whatever happens to these demigods, like, he literally couldn't care less because there's nothing to do with him, which is sort of understandable, but also a little bit heartless. And then obviously Tantalus claims that he had a dream about the Golden Fleece, but he gives the wrong coordinates. Obviously, he wasn't listening to a word Percy said when he was talking about it. And Percy tells Annabeth that the coordinates are wrong, but she doesn't say anything. And I think this is such a big moment for her because she realizes that, she's going to have to make a choice. She's going to have to betray Percy, even if she doesn't want to. Like, she's got to find a way to quest for this golden fleece without him. And that means that if she's picked to choose questmate, she's going to have to choose someone else apart from him. And she knows that that's going to hurt him really badly, but she has to do it. I feel like my girl is constantly put in really awkward positions. I think she's had a really rough time this season. Like, the more we talk about this season together, like, you're gonna see, like, she's been put through the absolute ringer, and I feel so terrible for her because of it. Anyway, so Tantalus chooses Clarice as his champion because she was the only person that completed the chariot race. Sorry, it doesn't matter that everybody would nearly died. It's the fact that Clarice, like, finished the race. That's the reason she was the champion. But I sort of had a look on Dior's face, and she looked so shocked. Like, it's almost as if she didn't want the quest, which kind of makes sense because it's a huge responsibility, and obviously, like, her father, being who he is, Ares, the god of the war, like, if she failed in this quest, like, he'd never forgive her, and she knows that. So I think that's why she was a bit like, oh, I don't really want to be a part of the quest. But yeah, sure, I'll save camp if I have to. Percy tells everyone that obviously Tantalus was lying, but nobody was listening to him. because obviously they're just like, oh, he probably just wants glory again to complete another quest, which we know is not the reason why, but sure. And Mr. D tells her to choose two questmates to join her. And to be quite honest, I knew when I was watching this episode for the first time, I knew what was going to happen. Like, I knew it was going to put Annabeth in a really awkward position, which was bad, and it made me quite sad, but it's fine. Percy asks Annabeth, what's the plan now? Like, he's always looking to her for advice. I feel like he thinks that she knows everything, which is kind of understandable, but also like nobody knows everything. At least I believe that anyway. And Annabeth sort of stands up and she volunteers herself for this quest, and Clarice chooses her to be a questmate. Percy also volunteers himself, and there's so many other campers that start volunteering. And Clarice is about to pick him, but Annabeth sort of stops her by whispering in her ear. And Clarice chooses Chris Rodriguez to join her on the quest over Percy. And you know what? Walker looks so hurt in this scene. And I was just watching it. It was literally tearing me apart. Like, this entire episode actually killed my Percabeth arc. So I was just like, what is going on? I was just like, I understand that Annabeth had to make a tough choice, and she did it. But the way Percy was looking at her, like, I think this betrayal is probably worse than when Luke betrayed him. This hurts him more because he's like, oh my god, like, she's supposed to be my best friend, and she's chosen someone else over me, if you know what I mean. And as Percy's about to walk out, Tantalus tells everybody that no one is allowed to leave the camp until the barrier's been fixed, and like border patrol can shoot anyone who disregards the rules, basically, which is such a harsh punishment. But there's a bit of a moment where Leah looks quite relieved, like Annabeth looks quite relieved that Percy can't leave the camp, which means he'll be safe and she can go and get the fleece. She's gonna do what Chiron's asked her to do, basically. Percy walks back to the Poseidon cabin, and Annabeth just stares at his figure, like retreating away. This was actual torture, like just seeing them. Like, he just looks at her with the most. He's so hurt by her decision, and he doesn't understand where it's coming from. And I think this has sort of destroyed any sort of belief that he has in her, and I feel like it's destroyed his trust with her a little bit as well, which is awful to think. But yeah, let's move on to the next scene. So the next scene opens with Percy obviously walking back to the Poseidon cabin, and Tyson asks him if he got the quest. Oh, he's so sweet. And then he tells him that, he didn't get the quest and Clarice did. And then obviously he's complaining to Tyson, and he's like, oh, like, Clarice picked Annabeth, but she didn't pick me because Annabeth was whispering something to Clarice that stopped her. And then, Tyson sort of said, oh, you mean like what she did with Bronte? And like all of a sudden Percy's eyes, like, he was like a meerkat. He's like, what? What did she say? And, obviously Tyson tells him that, well, he shows him because obviously cyclopses can manipulate voices and just say how it was said. And Percy looks so hurt and so betrayed, and I just can't. My poor boy, like, what are you guys doing to him? It's actually crazy. Percy tells Tyson that he's going to leave. Like, he's going to go and do this quest by himself because obviously he feels like he can't trust anyone at camp anymore, which is quite sad. And Tyson asks Percy where he'll go, but Percy just doesn't respond, and that's where the scene ends. I think they had such a great moment at the chariot races, and now because he's lost trust in Annabeth, I feel like he's lost trust in everyone, which is why he's probably not talking to Tyson as much. Which just seems sad for him to torture Tyson based on a choice that Annabeth has made, but I kind of get it at the same time, where it's like he just feels like he can't trust anyone anymore. Like, the people that he loves the most are turning their backs on him, which is not necessarily true, but I understand, like, in his mind that's what it sort of feels like. So the next scene is Percy's dream, and Grover wakes him up through the empathy link, and you know, he sort of Percy's wearing the wedding dress, and like, I'm so glad that they did that. I'm glad we got to see both boys wearing it, and I know that that was an idea that they both talked about during season one. So I'm so glad, like, the show runners have incorporated that in, because I thought it was such a great moment. And the wedding dress is stunning. Like, it's like this very off-white sort of color, and the attention to detail. It's got like the Swarovski crystals and like these hand-woven doves on it, which is just beautiful. And Percy asks Grover why he's wearing a wedding dress, and he tells him that it protects him from Polyphemus because obviously his sight is not very good. And Grover spots Tyson, and he starts panicking. He's like, Percy's like, relax. He's like, Tyson is just staying here right now, but he doesn't admit that Tyson is his brother to Grover, which I thought was a little bit harsh. Like, I understand that he's struggling to adjust with Tyson actually being related to him, but it just seems unfair that he won't even acknowledge that is his brother, even though Tyson thinks so highly of him. Um, and Grover asks how Annabeth feels about, you know, Tyson, and obviously there's a bit of book reference here when obviously we know from the books that Annabeth doesn't like cyclopses. And Percy says, he doesn't care. And you know what? That physically caused me pain. I was just like, you can't say that. She's everything to you. Like, you can't say that you're not bothered if she's okay or not. And, even Grover's shocked, like the sort of face that Arya pulls, he's like, oh my God. He's like, wow, I really never expected you to say that. And, Grover knows that Percy feels betrayed, obviously through the empathy link. They can feel each other's emotions. He can feel how angry and upset Percy is. And, he asks what's going on, but Percy says, I don't know myself. Like, he picked her for the last quest, knowing fully well that she would double cross him, and she never did. And today she's betrayed him. And, Grover sort of does the good friend thing where he's like, I'm sure there's a valid reason that she would never do something like this without a reason. And yeah, I'm hoping that Percy's holding on to that a little bit. And Grover tells Percy that Polyphemus is on his way back, and he puts his crown, and he puts his little bridal crown on, which was so cute. Honestly, slay Grover, you are a princess, and you should be able to do that. And he says that the wedding date is set for next week, which is so funny to me. I don't know, that sentence just made me laugh for whatever reason. And he puts the veil over his face, and Percy calls him beautiful. What a great bromance. Like, it's nice to see them interacting again. Like, I've kind of missed that bromance, like, at the beginning of season 2, because obviously there wasn't much of Grover, but I'm glad he's sort of back and is sort of like the next part of, like, we know that we're going to see him again, basically. And Grover says that no, sorry, not Grover. Walker and Arian have both said that scene, particularly where Percy's calling Grover beautiful, was just straight up improvisation. So I think that's quite good. Um, sorry, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, they're trying to end this scene, and then Percy eventually wakes up from the dream and grabs his stuff to leave the cabin, and Tyson hears the door open and obviously opens his eye. And that's where that scene comes to an end. Right, let's move on to the next scene. So obviously Tantalus's satyr man has spotted Percy leaving the cabin, so he's gonna go and tell him. Why not? And Percy asks Poseidon like not to stop him from going on this quest. And there's a bit where he's like, Walker's acting in this scene is just great, by the way. And there's a bit where Percy tells Poseidon that he wants to talk about Poseidon. About Poseidon, about Tyson, and he's really angry. Like, he's not happy that all of a sudden this monster is like his half brother, and he had no idea about that. And he says that he's not going to let the laws about the quest stand in his way. Oh my, Percy Jackson is back, guys. But he's right. Like, I know that there are laws regarding how a quest approaches, but he's the only person like who is going to be the best at sea. So it's like it makes sense for him to go on this quest. And he asks for a sign from his dad to say that he's blessed to do this. Like, he doesn't want to do it without his dad's permission, because he knows that his dad is in control of the sea. Like, he can stop him if he needs to. And as he asks for this sign, there's someone coming, like, walking towards him, and he thinks it's Poseidon, and turns out it's actually Hermes. And he says, not your dad, kid. I was like, oh my God. I was like, they're all just a bunch of unserious people. It's like, that's what makes it comical at times, because it's just like, I don't think these people actually know who they are sometimes. And, Hermes says that, Poseidon has said quest approved, like, and he's come bearing gifts, basically. And unfortunately, there was a bit of season 2 that's been changed. Obviously, Hermes doesn't have George and Martha, so there were two characters in the book that I thought they would bring to the screen, but they didn't. And I kind of get it. I understand it probably just slows the whole story down, so maybe that's why they didn't include it. But I thought it was a bit of a shame. But it's fine. It's something that I can accept. I understand that whatever changes are made in the show are for a good reason. So I'm not gonna dwell too much on it. And there's a bit of an adult joke here that I didn't know whether to say in this or not, because I just thought people are going to think that I'm so dirty minded, but it's the way that he said it that cracked me up. And my best friend insisted that I put this in. So if anybody has a problem with me saying this, take it up with my best friend, because I didn't want to say this quote, but he was like, no, it's really funny, you should put it in. So the quote is, what happens in Vegas is the reason for half the kids in the Hermes cabin. If you don't know what that means, wow, good for you. But I knew exactly what that meant, and my jaw was on the floor. I actually forgot that was one of the jokes in the episode. And you know what? It's so hilarious, and the way Lin Manuel Miranda says it is just, yeah, it was just iconic the way he said it. And I love that there's a bit of adult humor every now and again. It just shows that the show is maturing. Obviously those sort of jokes probably wouldn't be in season one, but I'm glad that they've been incorporated in season two. And Hermes knows, shows Percy, the Princess Andromeda, and he says that's his ride, basically. And Percy knows that Hermes wants something from him, but he's like, at the minute, I don't care. He's like, I just want to get on with the quest. And I'm starting to think that that detail that Hermes is not telling him is probably very significant, but whatever. Percy doesn't really care. And then it flashes to Annabeth walking up to the Poseidon cabin, and she knocks on the door, and Tyson answers the door. And Tyson obviously tells her that Percy's left the cabin. And, he says that Percy's really angry with her because she told Bronte to beat him up, which is not quite what she said. She just said take him out of the race. She didn't say beat him up, but yeah, sure. And Annabeth finds out that Percy is planning to go on this quest alone, and obviously she runs to go and stop him. And that's where that scene ends. Hermes gives Percy the multivitamins and the thermos of the winds. And Percy can see that there's something, like Hermes wants him to do something. That's why he wants to help him so much. And Hermes says that he wants to help Percy save a friend. Now, I know this could have been misinterpreted. He doesn't mean Grover, he means Luke, basically. Hermes still believes that his son is not beyond redemption. And, I don't think anyone's ever beyond redemption. And Percy's really angry. He's like, and he says this in a very, like, he's quite stern about it. He's like, I try to do everything right. I can't get my dad's attention for like 2 seconds, but the fact that Luke is trying to bring down Olympus, you're here and you're still defending him. And it's like, it was one of those things where it's like you see Hermes as one of the more caring Olympian parents. Obviously, like Percy feels like his dad just doesn't care, and that's a really sad thing for any child to feel. And obviously, it might not be true, but that's how he feels at the minute. And he tells Hermes straight up, he's like, I don't think Luke can be saved. I don't think he wants to be saved. But Hermes says to him, you can't give up on your family no matter what. And it's such a wise thing that he said, and it's such an important, like, moral lesson that he's teaching people. Like, family are the people you don't give up on, no matter how much of a pain in the ass they can be. Like, you still have to keep going, and you still have to keep fighting for them. And I think that's exactly what Hermes is trying to tell Percy. And he says to him, you got 2 minutes to decide what to do before the boat is out of range. And he gives him like this lifeboat to be able to reach the Princess Andromeda and disappear. And like my favorite part of this bit is the end where Percy's like, he's holding up the satchel that Hermes has given him. He's like, this doesn't mean that I agree. And it's just so funny. I couldn't breathe. I thought it was hilarious. And that's where that sort of scene comes to an end. Now, we're going to get into a bit of a Percabeth scene. I have many thoughts, so I'm so sorry if this feels like I'm talking about this one scene for like 20 minutes. So, Annabeth finds Percy and he says to her, you can't talk me out of doing this. And she was like, I can't lose another friend. The poor girl is really going through it. And I don't think Percy is actually understanding how she's feeling at the minute. I think if something happened to Percy, that would destroy her completely. He's probably the most special person in her life. And the fact that there's a chance that he's making such a risky decision where he might not come back, I think it scares her to death. And Percy asks Annabeth, why can't I go on this quest? And she says that I can't tell you. And it's such a horrible tension and angst between them at the minute. And it's just like she's stuck in a position. She wants to tell him the truth and she can't, which I think there's no worse position to be in, at least in my mind anyway. Annabeth tells Percy, he has to trust her. But I think that obviously that trust has been broken with what had happened, obviously with like Clarice choosing Annabeth as a questmate instead of her. Which is kind of Annabeth's fault, but also not her fault, if you know what I mean. And Percy says that, you've changed, and like Annabeth looks so hurt, like the flash of hurt on her face. She's like, she hasn't changed, she's just stuck, but he doesn't see that. And he says, I came here and I met you and I thought I was done with secrets and I felt terrible. I was just like, and it's the same way Annabeth must be feeling, she's betrayed him, but she had to betray him, but she can't tell him that she had to betray him, and there's nothing worse than that. Annabeth tells him, she didn't like all that mortal stuff. And I think this has been building up for a long time. When Percy kept asking her about what she thought of doing the things that he likes, and she just sort of kept deflecting it and being like, no, I don't want to talk about that, blah, blah, blah. Or she tries to change the subject. I think now, like, everything is coming out in the open. And I think this happens with a fight where something builds up over time and then another amalgamation of different factors get involved. And then this is one of the times where she feels like she can be honest with him and she can tell him, she's like, I didn't like it. Like, get off my back, sort of thing. And he's got like such a man response to it, which is like, he says, "Did you watch Jaws? Like, there's no possible way you watched Jaws and you didn't enjoy it." And it's like probably the most man response I've ever heard. And again, it's that thing where it's like you add something unserious into a serious scene, and Percy realizes that he'll never be able to understand Annabeth, like the things that she's been through. Like she's been part of this world since she was what, 7? Like she's seen the most horrific things. And he's had the luxury of being in the dark for a little while. Like up until he was what, 12, he was kept out of this world and he was protected by his mum. Whereas Annabeth has never had that, you know. And she feels like she can't be anything more than a demigod. Like she doesn't know how to live a mortal life. She's not in contact with like her mortal dad. Well, she is kind of, but they have a bit of a rough relationship. She hardly ever sees her mum. Like she really feels like she has no one, and she's just in this world, and she only knows how to live in this world. She doesn't know how to do both, and it's so awful to hear her say those things. But it's also like that's a struggle of most demigod kids. Like they never go home and experience a normal life. Like they're constantly running for their lives and they're constantly in danger. And I think that's exactly what's happened with Annabeth. And Percy says that he doesn't believe that they can't be friends just because they're different. And he can see that there's something bothering her and he wants to share that burden, but she says that she can't say it. And I think Percy, he's sort of kind of understanding, but not fully understanding, if you know what I mean. And you could tell she doesn't want Percy to know how afraid she is of what she knows, and that's why she's refusing to talk about it. Like this prophecy, just getting the gist of it, like is she knows that there's a possibility that Percy could change and she'd never want that for him. And I think that's why she's a bit like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And she said she doesn't say explicitly, but I think she's thinking like she's scared of what Percy will become if he ever finds out about the great prophecy. But as they're talking, Tantalus comes in and he interrupts, for God's sake, like get out. Like actually there was such a like not a great moment going on, but we were kind of making some progress in their relationship and he's just ruined it. So the last and final scene that we're going to be talking about is Tantalus obviously trying to kill Percy and Annabeth, and Percy just stands in front of her. Like even though they're fighting, he would never let anything happen to her. And Percy Jackson, the man you are, he's just perfect, isn't he? He's just the perfect fictional man. And Annabeth tells Tantalus, like the gods will know that they killed him, like he killed them, regardless of what story he makes up. And Tantalus defends himself, and he says, he's only defending the will of the gods, which their own children have violated, knowing fully well the consequences. And he goes, the thing that he's learned over 3,000 years is to never defy the wills of the will of the gods, otherwise you end up cursed, basically. And just as he's about to shoot at them, luckily Tyson runs in and he knocks Tantalus out the way, and they all jump into the lifeboat. And Tantalus is firing at them, and there's a bit where one of the arrows was aimed at Annabeth, and Percy just takes Riptide out and just hits it away from her, which I thought was so cool. And he's just always been like an Annabeth defender, hasn't he? Like he would never let anything happen to her, which I think is so cute. And Tantalus is literally having like an extreme crash out as the boat is sailing away. And Annabeth, realizes, he was like, we can never come back to camp. Like, we broke the law. Like, we're outcasts now, basically. And Tyson says now that they're going on a quest, and that's where the episode comes to an end. Okay, let's sort of wrap this up because I feel like I've been talking for a long period of time, even though I've been interrupted like God knows how many times. But yeah, let's do it. So let's wrap this up with my final thoughts and feelings. So the Stymphalian bird attack was so cool. Like I thought they were just it was just so book accurate. I loved it. As much as I don't like Tantalus, I think Timothy is such a fantastic actor and he has such a presence on screen, and you can really feel that when you're watching the show. The chariot races were probably even better than I could have possibly imagined, and it's definitely going to be one of my favorite parts of the whole show. Chris and Clarice are very cute. I really do ship them, and I'm glad we've got to see a completely different side of her this season. Tyson is such a beautifully written character, and I could not think of anybody more deserving to play him than Daniel. He adds just such this beautiful innocence to him that I've never seen before. I'm so glad we got some cameos from Chiron and Grover as well. It's nice to see them in the season, even if it's just for a brief moment. And obviously, I'm hoping we get to see more of them soon. I know that the Percabeth relationship at the moment is a little bit rocky, but I do have complete trust that the show is going to put them back on track when the time is right. Lin Manuel Miranda as Hermes, he's just honestly amazing, isn't he? And his speech about family was so good, and I think there's some great lessons that we can all take away from that. So overall, I was very happy with the episode, and I wouldn't change a thing about them. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening in. I'm so sorry this has been such a long episode, but it feels so nice to be back. All episodes of the podcast are available on Spotify and on my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe whilst you are there. It would be greatly appreciated. Follow me on Instagram, on Threads. Feel free to DM me any questions, and I'll be speaking to you very soon. By the time I record the next episode, I would have seen the season finale. So that's insane, but I will speak to you then. Mwah. Bye.